listing agreement. This is 19 pages, starting with a disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship. It is completed as always. This is a real estate broker firm, your name as the agent, and your client's names, of course, stated. Down below, we have the actual body of the listing agreement. Indicate the date prepared and the seller's name and your company, broker's company, and of course the address of the property, parcel number as well. Now this is the portion where we have the listing period, the beginning date and the ending date, and there are notes here that says not to exceed 24 months, if so on, so on and so forth. I would usually do 6 months or 3 to 6 months. And of course the listing price, specify if it's a probate or mobile home or manufactured home. And this is compensation for you as the listing agent. I would prefer to put the maximum that I could indicate here. Let's say 6%, because they can still negotiate it eventually, and you can fill out a modification to the listing agreement. You can also put 4.5. It's all negotiable. Or you can indicate amounts here, or if you like to see show a compensation schedule, like certain stages of the process that you charge certain amounts, you can also indicate it here. You put an X here. But otherwise, I would just indicate the percentage. And of course, additional compensation needs to be crossed out, because and how much you will charge for it. That is if the buyer is unrepresented, because of course you don't want to work both sides without equal compensation or parent compensation. And of course this is the portion where if the seller had previously had an agreement with another brokerage or agent, this is where they indicate it. And this is the portion, the part where items intended to be included and excluded. List items, just check whatever applies. Of course, if there's any liens, smart homes. And of course, this part is for the MLS and public marketing. And don't forget to have the seller's initials. If there's two, have them initial both. And of course, this is the broker's and owner's duties to each other. You can just read it off. It's very self-explanatory. And investigation reports. If you are including certain reports as part of the disclosures, make sure you indicate them. You click all these boxes. And going down, we have the advisories, what is included with, if it's a short sale, don't forget to click, because the car platform or program will automatically include it. So if it's a trust sale, you have to click that box and the trust advisory will pop up, will be included in this package. And of course, any addendum, compensation to broker. And of course, we have the verbiage here that says the amount of rate of real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individual and may be negotiable between seller and broker. Make sure that you explain this thoroughly. And once again, on this line advisory, once again, it's full, it's being explained. And over here, they included more verbiage in order to avoid any confusion. And there's this optional additional compensation for unrepresented buyer, or in, like, let's say dual agency, like a walk-in buyer that walks in without an agent and asks the listing agent to represent them. That is being explained as well. And just keep reading this part. There's a lot of things to absorb here. And once again, at the bottom, don't forget the seller's initials. It's very self-explanatory, and in this package, as you have seen, the agency relationship form is already crossed out because it's on the very top page, the very first page. It's included in this package. And there's the initials for the sellers again. And once again, here's the unrepresented buyer's explanations. Now keep on going, and these are all things that needs to be explained to the seller. If you need to do it as thorough as possible, I would suggest to do so, because we don't want any confusion or ambiguity in the seller's interpretation of this contract. Once again, make sure that they initial. Every single page will have seller's initials. Okay, and this is left blank. And if you keep going, now you have to check this part. If this is a property owned by a company or some kind of entity separate from a person, and of course have them sign and fill out, or you can fill it out, just get the information from them, their phone number, email, and so forth. And of course, this is your brokerage office and the address and your email and so on and so forth. And down here is the additional addendum included, the multiple listing service addendum. As you can see, there's lines to be filled out. Okay, and there's this pop-up window. This is actually being filled out in the CAR website. So we have pop-ups every time you place your cursor on the line, and you can fill it up. And these are also explanations of the multiple listing service, like what is an MLS and so on and so forth. And this, you should also, I would highly suggest to review this verbiage here, so that you can explain it to the seller, just in case they ask for an explanation or further explanation. And here, seller's concessions, and this is where it's also being explained to the seller, and I would highly suggest that you go over this so you can also explain it to your client. And here is the portion where seller authorization is, if the seller does authorize or not. This is important because this eventually will come up in the course of the listing, when you do have a buyer's agent with a buyer and inquiring about compensation. If you click this, I would highly suggest to educate the seller to the importance of having a buyer representative or agent, because you don't want to be in charge of two masters having this listing and representing the buyer at the same time. Although you can have a dual agency as long as you get compensated for it as much as possible. We don't want to do charity work, right? Anyways, here again, seller's instruction is a choice. The seller is being given a choice if there are restrictions, or if the seller would prefer to have images in the MLS, and so on and so forth. And here, just fill it up with your brokerage and your name and date, and of course the name of the seller. Down here is the seller's advisory, and once again, these are just verbiage explaining duties and other disclosures, important disclosures like death and other disclosures, contract terms, taxes, and so on and so forth. In your spare time, I would highly suggest that you look this over, make sure that just in case the seller uh, asks you questions, it's easier if you have gone or scanned these portions and at least have a good idea what this contract is including or whatever is not included. It's important that you know it. And of course, fill this portion for the seller. The seller should print his name and sign, and so forth. Now, this is a very important page, the broker compensation advisory. And of course, have them initial this, and eventually buyers will initial this if there is a buyer, because we all know that there is now another form for a buyer separate, which is the representation agreement between buyers and their agents for compensation. So it's good practice to have them make sure that you have all the spaces for initials be initialed by the client and the buyer. As you can see, this is in bold because this is very crucial and one of the main factors why there had been a change in the NAR situation. We had the NAR settlement. When enlisting a real estate broker to represent them, buyers agreed to pay the buyer's broker when escrow closes, but the person responsible for payment may be negotiated in the transaction, meaning to say that if the seller does agree to compensate the buyer's agent, now they have to provide you or the seller another form, a form where the seller would explain that the seller agrees to compensate the buyer's agent. And so on and so forth. I would highly suggest that you would take time to review this or scan it prior to any listing engagement with your client, so that you have a better understanding of what's involved in this contract, and of course have them sign this so that the parties are both aware. But of course, you as the listing agent would just have the seller sign the top form. Eventually, this will, if you do have a buyer submitting an offer through an agent, you will have the buyer sign this portion of the broker compensation advisory. And this is the usual form. This is been included in the previous older forms. Possible representation of more than one buyer or seller disclosure consent. And once again, you have to complete it. And then this same thing, fair housing and discrimination advisory. Have both parties sign, and this is like including the previous forms, the California consumer, and it's still here. You can see you have the parties to the contract sign and date, and this was included because I was clicking the box, but this normally should not be included unless the listing is a short sale. Anyways, that shouldn't be there. This was only included automatically because I clicked on the box on the first few pages. There is a portion that says if it's a short sale listing, a question that was on the like second page of the actual residential listing agreement. So I suppose that's it. 19 pages. Oh, there you go. When I clicked it earlier, if your listing is a short sale, you click this, and as you see, that thing, the short sale advisory page, automatically was included. Anyways, I wonder if I do this. There you go. See, I clicked the trust advisory, and this page too was included. Otherwise, if it is not a trust sale or a short sale, make sure do not click on those additional boxes. So there you go. I suppose this is pretty much clear cut. I will be explaining the buyer's representation agreement for the buyer's agent after this video. Thank you so much for your time, and just let me know if you have any questions.